Hello, my name is Nicholas Barrett. I'm presenting my visualization dashboard for CSE 564. I'm a non-computer science student, so I took the liberty of doing it in Plotly Dash, as was suggested by the professor. Uh, that actually did not, it reduced the amount of interactivity and brushing that we could do, but there was actually a surprising amount that we could maintain here in animations and interactivity that still kept it as a useful dashboard. So what I've done here is I've targeted the problem of wellness. So that could be like wellness of a people or a group of people, a country, state, all things like that. And it's a pretty hard thing to measure. So it's more of like a abstraction from data than it is a specific data set that we could look at. So for a lot of wellness index, they try to take a very multivariate sort of resource account, try to get at it from as many dimensions as possible. So some that could either be like healthcare data, it could be income data, that could be like business formation, or how many people are starting families, how many people are getting pregnant, things like that. So some data sets that I found that were associated with this, I found one that was different pregnancy rates, abortion rates, and miscarriage rates over age range for each US state over a pretty wide range of years. It was like 1984 to 2017. I've had to subset the data otherwise to get it from 2005 to 2017. I've then conjoined that with some political data for each state over the same time period, median income data over the same time period for each state, the minimum wage for each state, and then a couple of other economic factors. And so we could try to use these to do a multivariate analysis of what could constitute income in at least some dimensions and see how things are progressing over time for each state and then relative to each other. So that's what this dashboard tries to accomplish. We could see here at the top left, we have one of our interaction elements. We can select which variable we want to see on this map and then on this plot, and then explaining the total variance as well, but we'll get to that. So if we say select income for now, we have our graph of the United States, our choropleth map of the United States, but with income by state over time. So we can move a slider around and see how the relative state income or median income over time looks like. We can also hit this play button and have an animation of this. And so this works. We could switch this to say pregnancy rate from ages 15 to 17, and we could see that this moves on. We could see a general trend that the South has a much higher pregnancy rate, especially New Mexico, it looks like. And so from here, we can then also select a state for this dimension, and then we can check our line graph right next to it to see how New Mexico's pregnancy rate 15 to 17 does over time. So we just take the information from that animation and show it here. We can see it is a pretty big downtrend, although I don't think 2017 had any data. So we can check this we could see the political party for, this is New Mexico again. We could see in 2010 or in 2011, there was a shift from Democratic to Republican, or at least for the governorship. And so we could check out more data and see how that progresses over time. So pregnancy rate 20 to 24 is more associated with wellness because it's around the time when people would be starting families. 20 to 24 to 30 to 34 are the more of the better indicators. And then if people are getting pregnant 15 to 17 or 18 to 19, that is generally an indicator of negative health in this country, as there is that's less economic stability generally. And so it's not usually planned for. We can then evaluate all of our, some principal component analysis is also performed and some clustering analysis. And so we can then see two of our principal components here, and we could see how each of our variables is loaded on these principal components. This gives us some idea of how much correlation there is between the variables, at least with respect to these principal components. So this is a form of clustering and correlation plot, just so we can get some more information out, even though it's a pretty dense. There are a lot of dimensions that we've evaluated, so we have to use the zoom tool, but Plotly Dash allows us to zoom around these things. So we could see that pretty sensibly. Pregnancy rate 18 to 19 and 15 to 17 are pretty correlated. We can also see that the political party is correlated with that as well. Then we can inspect some other things. So we can actually see that the birth rate 20 to 24 is positively correlated with the state minimum wage. So that might be an indicator of what kind of things you would want to do to increase birth rate, which is an indicator of like general well-being. So we can explore all of our correlations like this. At least on the first two principal components, we can click this auto scale button and return the plot to its normal size. Now, most of the bottom section is gone by or is covered by a parallel coordinate plot, excuse me. And so on our parallel coordinate plot, we can shift around the dimensions. We can drag them from place to place. We can brush and select a few, and then we could cross filter that with a different variable too if we wanted, and we could see how this moves around. What I've included here is also our cluster ID from our k-means clustering that we did. We found based on the scree plot that 4 dimensions or 4 clusters was adequate to explain a good amount. And so using this last slider or this last parallel component, we can view each of our clusters by brushing. And so we can see how each of our clusters affects. And so some interesting observations that we found. So if you take the higher echelons of income, say 65K and older, and we can move this around to see how it goes around, we can see that high income is associated with lower pregnancy rate, 15 to 17, but is associated with higher pregnancy rate in 25 to 29 and 30 to 34 and 35 to 39. So the 25 to 29 to 35 to 39, those are the ranges where people are generally planning to have children. And if we drop this, we could see that the lower income brackets have a way higher association with pregnancy rate, 18 to 19, 20 to 24, and 15 to 17. It sweeps a lot more of this. You can see if we reduce this, it gets even more higher up on the pregnancy rate. And so we can use this to investigate some relationships here. So this is saying that income is associated with more family planning. And so we can use relationships like this. We also have our political party. This is independent governors. This is Democratic governors. And this is Republican governors. So we can investigate relationships like this. What I've also included is the total explained variance in our variance or our principal component scatter plot matrix. So this is each principal component plotted against each of the other principal components for the 4 that we have. This PCA loadings is the first principal component versus the second principal component. So this is the same graph as we could see right here on total explained variance. What's nice here is we can see how the principal components, in addition to up here, are splitting our variables. So here we can see pregnancy rate 20 to 24 in general is split on this principal component 2 here. Same thing here, makes sense. And so we can see how each of our variables are being split by each of our principal components to see if we're really getting at a specific dimension or space here. So if I go to income, we can see that it now has changed in principal component 1, at least in this direction, is generally associated with the income gradient. So we can see which kind of gradients our principal components are trying to take out of our data. So that's all the interaction and brushing and filtering elements that we have here. And so I hope this has been a useful demonstration of what a kind of dashboard could be for this multivariate high dimensional data and some kind of data reduction that we're trying to do. My name is Nicholas Barrett, and I hope you have enjoyed this presentation.